It always makes you stop and listen when a celebrity kind of pulls back the curtain, right?
Definitely.
Like Bethenny Frankel,
Mm.
ex-reality star, total businesswoman. She just dropped something pretty interesting about why she actually moved from Connecticut down to Florida.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. The Page Six piece from May 12th really digs into it because remember, back in April, the official line was just, personal and professional reasons.
Right, standard stuff. Very vague.
Exactly. But now it looks like there's way more to it, a lot more emotional stuff driving the whole thing.
That's what we're getting into today, right? That emotional side. Because it really sounds like those first reasons barely scratched the surface.
Totally.
This wasn't just like a business move or a simple change of scenery. It seems tied up with feeling lonely, actually searching for a different kind of life.
Yeah, so let's unpack it.
Okay, so April, personal and professional, pretty straightforward. But now, what's the real story she's telling?
Well, the Page Six article quotes her TikTok from Sunday, May 11th, and she basically says she hasn't been totally honest about why she moved.
Okay, so an admission.
Right. It suggests that, maybe those initial reasons had some truth, but they were definitely not the whole picture. And what's interesting is that she's now willing to talk about feeling more vulnerable, and that being the real reason.
And a big part of that vulnerability seems to be loneliness, doesn't it? She actually used words like lonely and unhappy.
Yeah, specifically over the last 5 or 6 years. That's quite a long time.
It really is.
And it's fascinating how she connects it to the COVID pandemic. She said it sort of gave her license to be the introvert and insular person that maybe people don't expect her to be.
Huh. Like the pandemic gave her permission almost to lean into a side of herself that maybe wasn't usually front and center.
Kind of, yeah. It makes you think, how outside events can sometimes let us embrace parts of ourselves we normally keep hidden, or maybe didn't even fully realize were there.
And this really played out in how she felt about living in Greenwich, Connecticut. She described it pretty vividly.
Didn't she just? Called it a cave, said she never did anything, could literally stay home for days without leaving the house.
Wow. A cave. That sounds isolating.
Extremely, especially when you think about her public persona. It paints a picture of, well, real social isolation, even in a place that sounds objectively nice.
It just shows that a nice house doesn't automatically mean happiness, right?
Absolutely not. It sounds like the only time she really had fun or connected was when she traveled out of town.
Quite a contrast. And it wasn't just Connecticut. Apparently, her feelings about New York City were changing too.
Yeah, she mentioned that relationship becoming transactional.
Transactional, meaning like...
Like just business, maybe. Going through the motions, not that real, authentic connection you might expect her to have with the city. It feels like a place that was once really vibrant for her just started feeling functional.
Okay, so if Connecticut felt like a cave and NYC felt transactional, Florida starts to make a bit more sense, especially with old friends there.
Exactly. She actually hopes moving to Florida will help reinvigorate her relationship with New York City.
How so? Like, distance makes the heart grow fonder.
Sort of. Maybe the idea is if her day-to-day life is better in Florida, visits to New York can be more positive and intentional, not just feeling like an obligation or, another transaction.
Makes sense. And what is it specifically about Florida that appeals to her right now?
It sounds like the simple things, honestly.
Yeah.
The article mentions her just wanting to be able to walk outside and take a walk on the beach and be just existing, like with other human life.
Okay, so less isolation. More connection, even just ambiently being around people. A total shift from the cave.
A huge shift. But it wasn't just about her own feelings, was it? Her daughter, Bryn, was apparently a massive part of this.
Right. Bryn's 15 now. What role did she play?
A huge one, according to the article. It says Bryn actually cried and begged her mom to move to Florida. She really, really wanted to go.
Wow. Cried and begged. That's intense. That must have had a big impact.
You'd think so, right? It seems like that was a major turning point for Bethenny.
What was Bethenny's first reaction, though? Was she immediately on board?
Not exactly. Her initial response was quoted as, well, pretty blunt. Fake, keen, FK it, okay.
Okay, so maybe not thrilled at first.
But she also said she kind of knew that once the idea was even floated, Bryn would latch onto it and really want it. It shows how much a kid's strong feelings can really steer the ship on these big family decisions.
Yeah, totally. And it sounds like the Connecticut house itself, even though it was objectively nice, might have been part of the problem for Bethenny.
It seems like it. She described it as beautiful and amazing for a big family with kids and grandparents, but then said she felt like she was drowning there.
Drowning.
Because she spent a lot of time alone there. It really highlights that disconnect, doesn't it? between how things look on the outside, big, beautiful house, and how they feel on the inside, isolating.
So she originally had a plan, right, to simplify things, but maybe wait until Bryn was older, off to college?
Yeah, that was the initial thought. Simplify, but later.
What changed that? Why the sudden rush?
The article mentions a specific moment. Doesn't say exactly what it was, but it was a point where the decision really became about Bryn's happiness. And somehow, focusing on her daughter let Bethenny get honest with herself about wanting the move too, and wanting it sooner.
Interesting. So prioritizing Bryn kind of unlocked her own desire for the change.
That's what it sounds like. And once that clicked, boom, things move fast.
Super fast. Selling the Connecticut place and buying in Florida all within 5 weeks, that's incredibly quick.
It really is. It shows real decisiveness once her feelings and her daughter's needs lined up. She sounds really optimistic about it, too, saying she thinks they'll both be lighter and brighter and happier in Florida.
You hope so for them. It's also kind of weird timing, isn't it? With RHOY, the Real Housewives show she was famous for, getting canceled after 15 seasons, she called the timing poetic.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Her history with that show is long, 3 seasons, then she left, came back for 4 more, left again in 2019.
Right.
So the show that made her famous ending right as she makes this huge personal life change, you can see why she'd call it poetic. Maybe feels like closing one chapter completely and starting a totally new one.
Yeah, like shedding an old skin, almost.
Yeah.
Free from all that reality TV stuff.
Could be.
So putting it all together, this Florida move is so much more than just packing boxes. It's really about tackling that loneliness, maybe reconnecting with her past through old friends, and definitely putting her daughter first.
Exactly. The initial story was, neat and tidy, personal and professional, but the real story is messier, more human. It's about wanting connection, wanting happiness for her kid, wanting something different than the life she had. It shows a much more vulnerable side than we usually see.
It really does. And it makes you think, right, how often do we give this simple, acceptable reason for a big life choice when the real reasons are much deeper, much more personal, maybe even things we're just figuring out ourselves? Like, what other big decisions that seem straightforward on the surface actually have all these hidden layers of emotion driving them? It's just a good reminder that there's usually a lot more going on beneath the surface than what people initially let on.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more updates on this developing story.